Good afternoon. Welcome to the May 19th, 2025 meeting of the Riverfront Advisory Committee. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'd like to open the floor to public comment. If anyone would like to make public comment. Mr. Collins.
The weir's up and running for the second time this spring. 2 weeks ago yesterday, I pulled out 9 bushels. 2 weeks ago tomorrow, over 100 feet of net had come down because of all the water and current. And the good people that live upstream tend to take leaf blowers and blow all this stuff down next to the river, so it clogs my nets up. I got it fishing again Saturday noontime. It wasn't until last Wednesday the water was even low enough to set it back up again. Right now, all I've got is a bunch of lamprey eels.
Thanks for the update.
How many lampreys did you catch?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't take them out. I guess there's probably plenty or more in there.
Next topic would be. Continue.
I'd really appreciate it if somebody could have the town move that piece of granite with the little bit about the history of the weir out from behind the snow fence. Because I have to keep pointing that out to people, and nobody goes down there and knows what it is. And that would at least suffice for something temporarily. It wouldn't take that much effort to put it, say, right behind the chain fence facing out towards the water.
I think the other challenge too is that whatever protective plastic on top of it has also faded or been affected by the sun. Is that the same fact? It's very difficult to read because if it's the same one you're speaking about, there's like a protective cover over the top of it, which has the UV rays, I think has gotten it very discolored and foggy and stuff. It'd be nice to replace.
You can still read it, but it would be
It'd be nice to replace that as well, absolutely.
It'd be nice to fix that also.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for your comment. Item number 3, review and approval of minutes from the last meeting on April 14th. Joe, I know you sent those out. I did not have any comment. I don't know if anyone else
I
did.
didn't. Joe, do you want us to just send you a quick note back that say everything looks good or whatever when we get them?
I think if you just see something wrong, just send
Okay.
a note saying, hey,
Okay.
can you fix this?
Sure.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 14th.
Second?
We'll give Ingrid the second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's see. Item number 4 is basically a discussion of capital improvement financing. And primarily, I think today's topic is going to go on one of the items that got noted in the master plan implementation table for a discussion of New Hampshire RSA 79 E4-A, which has to do with establishing a coastal resilience incentive zone. So and I guess my kind of layman's terms of it, basically just a tax incentive zone that could be looked at for the town to establish along the riverfront for both private and public, landowners to have a tax incentive to do some redevelopment activities related to increasing coastal resilience. So that could be stuff related to stormwater management, potentially culvert install, increasing or rehabilitating like tidal marsh. So things like the living shorelines that we've been discussing, activities like that. So it seems like there's a lot of potential benefit to doing something like that and spurring that kind of development or helping projects that need to get funded get additional funding consideration in the form of tax relief. So ultimately, anything that we discuss here today would ultimately end up with potentially advancing a recommendation for town council to ultimately look into this and further craft that. And then from there, my understanding is that it would go to a full, vote at town meeting, as early as next year, or ultimately whenever it gets advanced that far. But this seems like a good forum with the Riverfront, Advisory Committee to kind of be the first conversation of that. So, any initial questions, and maybe I'll invite Bart up to kind of talk a little bit to it as well.
How's that pronounced? Grizz?
Yeah, I guess. CRIZ,
Grizz program?
Coastal Resilience Incentive Zone. It seems like, my read on this is that everything kind of kicks back originally to that 2016 report that got done for the Seacoast. I think it's referenced somewhere in here. Yeah, preparing New Hampshire for projected storm surge, sea level rise, and extreme precipitation. But that ultimately, how we identify, we the town identify the zone that falls within this this district can be used with considerations from that report, either storm surge, sea level rise, or extreme precipitation projections. I'm wondering if we can't also do some combination of those for effectively looking at and establishing the area and the properties that would be ultimately able to apply for this tax incentive.
So would this be for properties within a specific floodplain?
Yes, so it wouldn't apply to everybody. It would be people, directly along the riverfront. And then I guess that's what I was kind of sort of clumsily trying to say right there, is that the boundary, I guess, of said zone is a little bit open to interpretation. And that's why they're, the actual, language of the RSA gives the town some latitude about who makes it into that zone based on, some consideration of storm surge, sea level rise, or extreme precipitation listed in that Seacoast report from 2016. So that's how we could ultimately use as the basis for drawing lines on a map to denote that zone. I'm not seeing anything that really says we couldn't. I would almost think you do it with a combination of sea level rise and storm surge.
So when I think of the areas where you could make a real argument that it would be areas that we want to see improved and areas that we want to see made more resilient, because the floods of winter a year and a half ago demonstrated the area around the boat launch. That area especially is vulnerable to flooding, and certainly within the, if you start adding a foot and a half or so of additional sea level rise between even now and 2050, and we hope any improvements we make are going to last. That's only like going to be, by the time we build it, it'll be 20 years in the future. So we're hoping to last considerably longer. So, and it's sometimes a little hard to separate what's public, what's private. If it starts flooding in there, ideally, I think there's a lot of work left to be done to figure out, a lot about what the riverfront's going to look like in the future. But ideally, you can encompass several things in that plan, and when you have that plan, then this would be another way of spreading out the cost. It's really the town giving a tax break to the people that are investing in that. So it's not like free money unless you get grants or something from outside, but it is a way, it's a huge asset to the town to have a vibrant downtown, all those reasons. So this is a way of kind of financing that in some sense.
Yeah.
So my understanding is it allows people on the riverfront or whatever to make improvements for resiliency, and their property taxes will not be increased because
Right.
of what they do. So I would think,
It looks like too, that is limited to a maximum of 5 years, is that correct? Yeah.
It could be increased.
Yes. Yeah, where's that? So tax relief in this case means the property taxes will not increase for the cost of any property or structural improvements during the period of eligibility set by the municipality, which barring exceptions can be for a maximum of 5 years. And obviously, we're talking a fairly limited pool of people that this applies to, but it also encapsulates basically every property butter in the primary downtown, riverfront area. So it still seems to be, valuable for both private entities as well as the town itself. It's also a landowner in that area.
Now, Fish and Game is in that area. Do they, a silly question, but do they pay taxes?
Question. Yeah, I don't know if they're exempt as a state entity. Interesting.
Did you hear the question, Bart, or did?
I'm pretty sure they know. I'll check.
Yeah, I would think, like, the church would be tax exempt, probably, too.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyone have any kind of general thoughts on this? I mean, ultimately, with anything like this that kind of gets mired in, taxation language and RSAs, I think a lot comes down to specifically how it gets written and crafted on whether people like it or don't like it or want to hear more or tune out entirely. But I think on the face value, I don't see any potential drawbacks. It seems like it's only a benefit for both, again, private property owners adjacent to the riverfront that, the town is going to be looking to engage with any of these projects we're talking about, as well as the actual town itself with its own properties. Shanda Park, Creighton Street, wastewater plant, all of those things.
Yeah, so is this something that needs to be done in advance? Is it something that we go through the town council because we want to have it as a tool in our toolbox before we get there? Or is it something is a potential tool, and as the conversation develops, then you can say, okay, that would be useful for us. That would be something we want to make available, and at that point, bring it through the town council.
Right,
Yeah.
so is that something the town has to adopt? I mean, if it's state law, does that just automatically flow in, so the town needs to adopt? Okay.
Yeah,
Here comes Bart.
correct. And that's why the timing is probably right for this conversation
That's
to
what I was
start.
gonna ask.
Because
We
we're a
have
long
to put
time.
it on
There's a
on
cheat
the
sheet
warrant.
there. I know it's for a different power setting than I need, but give me a flow diagram.
Yeah.
Procedural, they're all the same.
Yeah.
How they're adopted.
So,
Oh, right, on the back, yep.
Yeah.
so overall, that's probably why this is the appropriate time to start having this conversation, because we're sitting here, 10 months from the next town vote. This is where you start thinking about and kind of crafting.
It's fastly approaching because we have to be ready by September.
Yep.
So, of course,
Yeah.
George?
in order to get on the March docket for town meeting. So procedurally, yep, town council, it's proposed, could be by the town council or even petitioned. And they would put it on the warrant, and then it'll be voted on in the March meeting. So it seems like there's two mechanisms for this sort of, like Sam said. One's a capital reserve fund, and the other is the actual establishment of the zone. There have to be two separate warrant articles, probably.
Do you have to do one without the other? I couldn't really
I think
suss
you may
that
want
out.
to. I don't know, because well, I guess that's something you want me to discuss. You know, we have capital reserve funds already. It's not foreign concept, and we have 79E too. That's how the mill buildings got redeveloped. There's a couple parcels besides the mill buildings that are utilized by 79E to help reconstruct and revitalize those structures. So I think you put both on, or I have to ask legal counsel if you have to do both. But,
Yeah, I mean the way that it says, like, especially it says municipalities
You
may
could.
create
yeah,
a non-lapsing CRIS fund as a capital like. So that sounds selective to me, but I ain't a lawyer.
yep. That's something we can discuss with legal counsel if you can do with on one warrant article or not. But as for the answer to Dale's question, I think you want to. One, it starts. It's a conversation starter, and it becomes more present in that dialogue. You know, and then if we have something, if it were to be passed, then there's a tool for us to use and start planning for, start saving at least. We might not know exactly what we're saving for, but we know it's that for that area.
Yeah, it kind of creates its own timeline, because if you say we need to be ready for this to, you know, it has to be ready so that you can start to craft the warrant article or whatever you need by September, whatever that is. Well, I think it's going to make sense to be thinking about that in terms of, okay, what are we trying to, you know, you want a story to tell voters by next February. That's
That's what I was thinking too, was that
what are you using this for? Well, here is, and
Right.
it would start to stimulate the conversation among stakeholders about
Mhm.
what is it. So
I think you want, so there's some capital reserve funds that are very specific, like for instance, master plan update. Can't use that for anything else but that. There's one called the downtown TIF district. You know, it's for revitalization projects right here. So I think anything that is considered should be, you know, not to be an oxymoron, but broad, but specifically broad. Just so that we know this is for this area, it's no for infrastructure improvements for the most part, but it could be for maybe buying easements that we may need. Not just, you know, great infrastructure, green infrastructure. That, this specific 79E allows for that land acquisition as well. And that's probably something that could be, you know, be very beneficial for us in this case.
Right.
You know, at least to get an easement over certain properties for specific projects. So I think, yeah, we can definitely craft it in a way where it tells that story in a paragraph of what this is going to be used for. And then also that story can be expanded upon when if the town considers establishing the zone as well, the coastal resiliency zone. So that's where maybe in tandem or together, it would be good.
will they be the same? Yeah,
Two different mechanisms.
two different mechanisms, but do you imagine that the boundaries will be the same for both of those?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think you want to.
Yeah.
I think that gives more confidence to the voter what it's going to.
Yeah.
And what you're saving for what specific region. So I guess it's really for the this committee and town council to decide what is that region, you know.
I mean, let me just put some specifics about it. I think, to me, the boundary is similar to the boundary of our discussions. It's roughly from Bryant Rock down through, you know, town-owned land, certainly the area in front of the sewer plant, and perhaps down to the ice fishing landing. You know, that area. Now, some of them won't have a lot of activity around it, but that's a rough area to start with.
Well, also, you could probably bring it in a little bit on Creighton Street. Because this allows you for that zone to extend the freeboard. So what happens is sea level rise, these houses are getting more inundated with storm surges. This zone could allow for a property owner to apply for a coastal resiliency revitalization to lift it up. So, allow for water pass through, but without, allowing to live there, continue to live there, but in a more safe.
And I think that's the sort of thing that our taxpayers want to know is it going to help? Is it going to help my neighbors so they're not washed out and they're not washed away? And is my property going to lose value because somebody else's is washed away?
Right. And is it safe to say, is this just sea level rise, or is it
Storm surge as well.
storm surge, precipitation events?
Precipitation.
Yeah, it specifically lists all three. So like I think like a potential question would ultimately be like how do you structure that? Is it, storm surge plus like the median outcome of sea level rise? Because I know like for that report, like the upper bound sea level rise projection was like trying to present a worst case scenario. So like that might not be like wrong, but it is also like a fairly extreme outcome. But also like if all we're talking about is establishing like a tax district that we want to be generous to begin with, that also might not be the worst way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they tightened up, like for the 2050 and 2100 sea level rise projection a few years ago. To your point, Sam, they tightened that up. It increased the probability that it was going to fall within, because at one point it was more like, well, by 2050, potentially you could have 3.5 feet of sea level rise, and it became closer to the 1 to 2 feet. But the likelihood of your getting that went up, I think, at the same time.
Yeah, it looks like it gives a lot of discretion to the municipality. So I'm just going to read a segment that kind of, you have this in front of me too, the second paragraph. And it says, the CRIS program, state statute states the resiliency measures can include actions such as elevating structures, mechanical systems, freeboard renovations, construction of natural features, enhancing or creating tidal marshes or structures that enable increased water flow and post-storm surge water infiltration, and relocation of property to higher elevations on the same or another parcel within the same municipality. Regardless, each municipality has discretion to determine its own list of resiliency measures. So,
What's a freeboard renovation?
you're lifting the structure up.
Okay.
Yeah.
This really probably for you, Lindsay, but going back to we had a lot of discussions earlier about Moonlight Brook, and since then it's been sort of in your area. But one of the conversations was about, they did the work over on New Road and we talked about, I think in that H&H study, it was going to come up with maybe similar to what was done before the McAllen Dam was redone, sort of a precipitation analysis, extreme precipitation events. What was the result of all the work and changes we're making going to be on the flood? It seems like if you're going to include some of these places that could be affected by precipitation events, some of that analysis perhaps would be helpful.
I would agree with that. I would say not necessarily getting into the weeds of the additional analysis and what's been updated, but considering the history of flooding and the areas of the downtown that have been impacted by flooding would be important in considering this zone. Because when you're talking about storm surge, sea level rise, and extreme precipitation events, that's basically what we got with the Mother's Day flood. So any areas that were impacted and are hydraulically connected. So if you have a backup, you have sea level rise at downtown at Shanda Park, and you have backups through the storm drain system that comes out on Exeter Road, the area around the bowl, all of those areas, I would say, should be considered with the zone impact or influence, I guess, from something like this. I don't know if we're talking about outside of downtown areas, and there are other areas that are coastal along New Road and Bay Road that could be considered and have infrastructure there, but it's not really the downtown revitalization components. So, not sure where to draw the line there, but I would say as far as downtown, for sure, along 108 and everything that's hydraulically connected to Powell Falls with discharge.
Another question I have, and I definitely don't have the technical expertise. I did attend a program that the Conservation Committee did years ago about rain gardens, and it made me very aware of the runoff that comes off of all the high points here, and if we could extend some of that or some of that funding so that people who could put their rainwater into a rain garden rather than, I've seen it run down through the parking lot just across the street here, and all the town buildings, all those buildings along the main street.
Yeah, that would definitely fall into that category of post-storm surge water infiltration. So installing infrastructure like that encourages that and aids in that, that's okay, in that infiltration would fall under the list of resiliency action items that could fall under this.
So to kind of, the zone might be bigger than we think. You know, so.
Yeah, right, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all the stuff I see come from all the downspouts that come shooting out on a rainy day, that if there were gardens behind some of the front row of buildings, woo.
Well, it also gets back to the whole design of Shanda going back, because the living shoreline conversation, again, I was talking a lot about, gee, that parking lot, you don't want everything just shushing down the street into there.
Exactly,
So
right.
maybe that's not a resilience issue. You're trying to get rid of water in the case of a flooding type event, but you have to design it with both objectives. You know,
Yeah.
how do you
keep it from moving down there?
How do you keep it from polluting it? So you want to get more infiltration and all of.
Right.
It's a big,
Yeah.
comprehensive redesign of the areas to achieve all that.
And then we also need to probably consider the properties north of the dam as well. Because as all those smaller streams come into the Lamprey up there, I'm sure that there's some problems with the water, flooding properties.
That's where I don't know if it falls under the coastal thing, like, as it's not a tidal portion of it. That's where I don't know if it falls outside the scope of this or
Because
not.
that's,
Well, that's,
Someone
think-
smarter than me would have to weigh in on that.
But
Yeah.
precipitation events too, so I think there's other communities outside, coastal, the coast that actually adopted this provision. I think Hopkinton has one. I was wondering who has this.
Right, exactly.
I think Hopkinton has it, Boston. So those are all, river communities.
yeah. In some sense, a lot of that heavy lifting was done, for above the dam stuff. That was done when we redid the McAllen Dam, the whole widening of the spillway, the redoing of the dam gate so you can let more water go down. And at some degree, in terms of handling high water flow through there, it really, the interesting thing was they did all that modeling that showed that if the idea was, would you have less flooding if you took the dam out? If you just totally took the dam out, would that cause so much more? But it turns out in an event like those flooding events we'd have before, the Route 108 bridge abutments constrain flow so much that removing the dam wasn't going to change the amount of flooding you saw under those circumstances. So the Lamprey was very complicated because you also had the whole thing with Route 108 and the flow split and water going up towards Mill Pond Dam. All of that stuff was mixed in there. But the point of it is a lot of that, trying to look forward and account for increasing precipitation. That work was done at the time of the McAllen Dam, I think.
But I'm sure that there's probably areas further up with little tributaries that are flowing into the river above the dam, which gets flooded as well. I mean, the thing to do is to look at the floodplains.
I mean, it doesn't, none of this preparation takes away the idea you could have a flood again up there.
And that brings me back to my question, is how much of that flooding can we divert by having downspouts turned into the grass instead of onto the front driveway that runs down to the storm sewer? If we did that extensively in neighborhoods where it went in and filtered into the grass or into the garden, would we reduce that runoff? If you walk around, you'll see most of our downspouts run to the paved area and down to the storm sewer.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on your geology. Do you have ledge underneath you? You have clay soils, and it's just gonna, it's just gonna run off. So it won't infiltrate as much. So, but that actually brings a good, it's a good segue to like stormwater assets. Like for those areas that can't accommodate infiltration, is there gray infrastructure that can be installed, or could there be big remediation projects to change the soil type in order to promote more infiltration? So I'll defer to Lindsay about what those could be, but I think it's an opportunity to potentially, if we had such financial mechanisms, to consider those types of projects.
It's always interesting to me to see when you turn off the pour onto 16, how much of that rain garden there must prevent that inflow to the Great Bay, because that's an enormous rain garden as you turn in there.
You talk about by the turn near Newark's?
Yeah,
right there.
yeah.
Okay.
And also there by C&J at Pease.
Yep.
Well, probably a lot of that was actually required.
That's what I'm saying, those are required by the state,
Yeah.
Those are
bioswales.
the rain gardens, yeah.
But even things I know, there's an asphalt that actually is impervious for
Yeah,
rain.
and they have that for all
Yeah.
bike paths there, Pease.
Yeah.
You gotta maintain that though.
It's,
Yes.
it's not easy.
Vacuum it.
Yeah,
It's-
it's not
it's-
easy to maintain, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have the longevity either.
Right. I don't think I don't think it's seen as promising a solution now as it was then. And
Yeah.
they've had a lot of troubles with it.
It must be about 30 years old now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the Target Lowe's was a place where that was part of the environmental way they got that in there, and it requires a tremendous amount of maintenance for it to perform as they had hoped.
Well, they actually use it more for snow piling in the wintertime. Rarely do you see cars parked out that far. So it's, anyway.
But I think that's important as we set the boundaries of what we're talking about. All of this could come under it. But at the same time, I think in terms of what we're going to be trying to really push forward quickly, it will be a lot associated with the area we've been working with right along, the area down on the waterfront, the area where it'll be impacted by sea level rise in a kind of a more predictable fashion coming over the next 20 to whatever years. So,
I guess I feel that if you're going to install something, you have to make it townwide. So there, I'm sure, we have to look at the map and take a look at any other areas that could be in floodplains that are not, like I said, from tributaries. I mean, we lived in a property in Derry and we had 300-year floods in the 30 years we were there. So,
Just want to kind of circle back, just
yeah.
a way to conceptualize the two programs within 79E:4-A is one's for the municipality itself, for the capital reserve fund to save. The other is for private property owners to utilize, with an agreement with the town, to offset any improvements and offset increased tax valuations. So I think it's just a way to think about it.
I will admit, like administratively, how specific does this thing need to be? I mean, do you have to have the full language and like zone that you're planning on adopting to advance this? I mean, I would think yes for like people to actually vote on it at an article, but no for it making it that far. Like,
I mean, you could probably be as specific or vague as possible. I mean, again, that's a legal question, but I think what I can do for the next meeting is just look at all the communities and what language they use, and kind of give us an idea of what has passed in other communities and what do they use it for. So that'll give us an idea of our inland communities, and then also our coastal friends. So I think that'd be helpful. And also, we just want to. We can see what other people do, but we know what's happening in Newmarket, so we can, start, crafting that language and having discussions of what should be included. I think to meet our needs, because we have kind of a specific needs.
Do you know if Dover, Portsmouth have adopted this? Anybody?
Again, I just did a quick search today for this conversation, so I'll do a little more in-depth analysis on which communities. But when I didn't see it pop up immediately, but I'll check.
Dover's usually
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I think there is a tax cost to this, so, rain gardens are wonderful things, but I think you'd have to be careful to define something where I don't think we want to be, giving people a tax break who are redoing their landscaping, so to speak, so that would be a real issue when we came time to get it voted on, so I think if
it's a benefit.
yeah.
I mean, I read this as they're looking for more substantial projects to begin with.
Big projects.
Because I mean, in the flow chart it says right off, if for rehabilitation is it substantial, basically 75K or 15% of structure's assessed valuation. So, and then the municipality may set higher thresholds, but again, that's like what you're saying, oh cool, you put some crushed stone at the end of your driveway isn't a tax relief. It's hey, we're redoing the seawall.
You have to have.
These are for capital improvement.
We're doing a full park renovation,
Yeah.
which for the things that we've talked about, maybe controlling runoff from Water Street in the parking area, it doesn't qualify, but opening up a culvert and potentially elevating a portion of the park via raised platform would.
But the municipality is different. That's where the capital reserve fund comes in. So you can start planning it as a municipality for what those improvements are. H&H study, culvert replacements, living shoreline, and whatnot. And then on the other side, you have the 79E zone, which for private property owners. I think it's just try to get everyone under the umbrella through two different mechanisms. Because the municipality can't do everything from a capital reserve standpoint, especially on private property.
Right.
So, but it can make an agreement.
So, at this point, it sounds like there's no disagreement among us. We want to move over on that. We need to start coming up with we need more of the specifics around the area and everything by September. Is that true, or
We need language and map.
by September? So,
And then also probably a rationale why are we doing this? What's the benefit? What's the public benefit? That'll be a supplement to the warrant article.
Is there any mechanisms that exist remaining either through the master plan potentially or the coastal resilience grant where like we could get 2 hours of someone's time at GIS to map a couple zones based on some of the sea level rise conditions in that report to just see what we're talking about?
Yeah, I can look at the report, so I have some capabilities. So if I just have the layers,
Yeah.
I can easily mark what properties are affected, and then at least have our basis of conversation. Start that.
That might be it from just visually,
Yeah.
like, what is it? Because, like, I don't know. I'm a little bit torn between, like, using the 2100, like, target sea level rise numbers, because they're, like, really high, but by the time this is implemented, then you're talking, if it's 2050, like, that's really only a 25-year time horizon, which, like, most capital projects
By the time it's,
Gonna
by the
exceed?
time it's implemented, it's only
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah,
We're
exactly. So,
already 2025, that's 25 years away, you know.
Yeah, it seems like we need to plan longer than 25 years,
so like,
20 years.
I think picking the 2100-year targets are right. I think how you maybe rein that in is you pick like the median target. You don't pick the high target.
Right.
You pick like the median outcome target in 2100 as your sea level rise boundary.
Yeah, and it may not necessarily be, I think you have to, when you start, I don't know that the idea wouldn't be that you wouldn't have flooding under any event at that point, but you don't want to have, I don't think you'd want to see the area around Shanda. Not just speaking about the raised area, which is supposed to be protected, but I don't know. Seems like it would be too bad to have a Shanda area that has some of what might be municipal parking. I don't think you'd want to see that where you're planning it for it to flood twice a day. At that, I mean, in other words, it's got to be up high enough so that it's a usable municipal area. I think Shanda might flooding when you get storm surge and stuff like that, but. But the point I guess I'm trying to stumble around is, you get early on when you're defining that, you kind of got to say, what is our target? What is the flood range? What do we want to have it? If the sea level rise is going to be by 2100, if the median expected is 2.5 feet, say, well, is the goal so that that it won't flood unless there is a flooding event in a lot of the areas that we're trying to plan for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of have to have which criteria.
Yeah, I think when we go on past experience, what has flooded, down there, what are the projections? It's a probability that happen again. So I think what makes sense is like the bowl, Exeter Road. I think that'd be included. They're hydrologically connected. And then, the immediate downtown area, along the mill buildings and, Creighton Street and whatnot, Water Street. And again, what is was a high participation event? Where are those areas affected? I mean, you got a lot of precipitation when you come from the hill, and everything's coming down to the river. So should all those properties be included as well, in order to mitigate any damages done by any type of event? So I think we'll just have a map to look at next meeting. Take a first pass, continue the discussion on what are we trying to, is it coastal surge, is it flooding in general, is it all three, which the RSA allows for? And then just start brainstorming where else in the community could be affected by such events. Maybe along the Piscassic River, as well. So just something that came, to mind. The idea is just to allow people to prepare. Stay in the community, and these mechanisms allow for that. Right. So allows us as a municipality to plan in our areas where we own, and allows fortunately it'll probably happen after it'd be reactionary, you know, it's already happened, I don't want to happen again, I'm going to do this. So, but maybe some people will be proactive and use it as well, if it were to be adopted. Yeah, I think we just one step at a time. We got a couple more meetings, June and July. I feel like July, maybe we can have some language developed for the warrant article.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
administratively, like, I'm kind of looking at you, but like, you know, if and when something gets put up to town council, I mean, like, turnaround time to address it, like,
Well, September, when we needed to have it ready for the town.
Yeah,
that's, I guess what I'm
yeah.
working back from is if we need a warrant by September.
Well, we would have the language for it, but the warrant article wouldn't be done until next March, right?
Right, so town council will decide to put it on the warrant or not in that fall time frame. It's usually when the budget's being
September,
considered.
October,
Yeah.
November.
Like for our,
Say November
yeah,
at least.
yeah, our budgets need to be done by September 15th. So typically around there, I think there's anything. I can check in with town manager too when exactly he would need it.
So we want to have our input done by about that time. That's kind of,
I think input done by August and everything finalized by September meeting.
Yeah.
That'd be the ideal scenario.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. If not even like July,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, but like earlier the better, so that if there are further questions or clarifications, there's some actual time to react to that.
Mhm.
Not just, oh, we have to wait another year because we
yeah.
sat on it too long.
Yeah.
You know?
It's quicker, not slower, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think it was a good discussion to have today. It seems like I'm generally in favor of putting it forward. You know, obviously doubles in the details. So, you know, what's the actual language and what are the boundaries that get, you know, established here? But if we can kind of have something to start with for further discussion next month, then keep refining that concept. Maybe push something town council's way in the summer.
What makes me think about is, it might be worth, look, we've sort of fallen in the habit of looking 1 month ahead as to when our meeting gets placed, but probably a lot of people know what their summer vacations is. We might want to look at all
That's
the
what I was
meetings
keeping in mind,
between now and August and kind of take our first stab at where it's going to.
That's what I was just
Land.
pulling out and looking at, because
So are you suggesting that we establish meetings through September, basically?
Right,
Yeah.
I think we should look at, we've got June ahead of us now, so we normally would be June 9th. That's what just pops up from second Monday.
Just,
I'm fine with June 9th, but I don't know about anybody else.
I may be away on the 16th, so the 9th would be great.
Okay. Then we got July 14th is the next one that would
I will
pop.
be away virtually all of July.
Okay, so we can't help you there.
I'm no help in July.
I'm okay July 14th.
I'm okay with 14th, too.
I think so as well. I don't really have anything planned this summer, so.
Okay. Well, if we have to do something different, we can. The August one is August 11th, and I'm back from my vacation then, so they're all working great for me if it works for anybody else.
Then that works for me.
I
The only
definitely
one
won't be there for that one, but we can have everything ready by then. Just I'll be here in spirit.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd prefer the 11th to the 18th.
So that's good. I mean, that we're essentially all those months, what we're saying is, for at least for now, you can plan around the usual second Monday to have the meeting. And then in September, it's the 8th. And that's the day after the Pease Air Show, but other than that, it's,
Yeah, Labor Day is the 1st this year.
yeah.
That's super early.
It's very early.
Can I just make sure I got June 9th, July 14th, August 11th, and September 8th? Well, basically the second.
Yeah, I mean, at face value, for once, it looks like second Tuesdays or second Mondays aren't holidays.
Right.
I'm not here in July, but that's okay.
In October, it will be.
So probably more than anything, it would be just I'm looking at Dale, Betsy, and myself. Probably the three of us just have to confirm that 7/14 date, because if Ingrid and Joe are away, we want to
We'll need the rest of
still
it
be a
there.
quorum so that we
Yeah.
can actually formally
Yeah.
do stuff. So just take a second look at 7/14. I'm not thinking of anything offhand, but make sure that's accurate. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think short term, this is kind of the focus for next meeting, maybe the next couple of meetings, to see if we can kind of craft this and put forward. But as the actual town moves to finalization of the master plan and that big implementation chart that we spent some time with, like to haul that back out in the not so distant future and start kind of looking at that, because I think it is the work list, for lack of a better term. So, can you just give like a real high level overview to master plan? Like, is that still?
So good news for this committee, that's the first chapter they'll be reviewing, so you'll have a list more further than everyone else. So for that chapter. So so the highlight last meeting at the planning board, they kind of create a work schedule. Every meeting right now, they're going to meet an hour beforehand, discuss the master plan chapter. The first one on the docket is the downtown Riverfront, and then they're going to do that throughout the summer and fall. There might be opportunities to have additional workshops as well, kind of to speed up the process. But they didn't really discuss, will they have, after they're done finalizing a chapter, will they send it to public hearing and have that, or were they going to wait? I imagine as they're coming off the factory line, they're going to go to public hearing and then just adopt them and just do it on a rolling basis. Again, we'll have to discuss that. I don't want to, kind of set expectations, but that's one process. And then the other was they just wait and do it all at once. But again, by the next meeting, I'll have an update on that and tell you how everything went at the planning board meeting. And I invite you all to come. It's the second Tuesday of the month. I think it's June 11th next. My dates are right. It'll be 6 p.m. in here. Be wonderful to have one or a couple of you here, or everyone. That'd be great, because you've been so instrumental in developing it. If they had any questions and whatnot. Yeah.
Did you say the second Tuesday?
Second Tuesday, yeah.
That's 10.
June 10th. June 10th, 6 p.m.
I can probably come. Is anyone else thinking of coming too? Just again, if we.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I'll have to check my schedule.
Yeah.
It looks like I can. I've got to be in Boston that day, but I hopefully can be back for that.
Yeah, and just let me know if you plan on it, because I think what I'll do is I'll just notice it that both planning board and committees are got a meeting, so there's no quorum issues.
Yeah.
And it's at 6 o'clock, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that was kind of my thought exactly. It was might want to do that. Just putting it on calendar. Oh, cool. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So that was kind of primarily, sort of one and only topic today, was to kind of start peeling the layers back on this and seeing what it is and what more we needed to know. It seems like we have a decent plan of attack for now until next meeting on June 9th here. Any further kind of questions, discussion items anyone wants to talk through? We'll continue this conversation on June 9th, and then, yeah, I'm looking forward to the planning board thing on the 10th. Sounds interesting as well. Yeah. With that, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.